We practiced the kiss for the play at midnight. The audience wasn't there. I'm not jealous of bodies. I'm jealous of who gets rehearsal. Bodies will tell the truth if you let them. Rehearsal decides when the truth is allowed to speak. At midnight under the work lights, the stage smelled like dust and possibilities, and Marco stood on his mark with his hands in his coat pockets, playing the kind of character who gets forgiven because he knows where to look when he says sorry. Raphael leaned against the ghost light, watching. He'd joined the production 3 days earlier as our intimacy coach, which meant he had the job of teaching our mouths how to lie in a way that made the audience believe the truth. Again, Raphael said, and his voice found me with the precision of a metronome. Eyes first, then breath, then contact. If the kiss is the first thing you give, you're saving yourself too much. We had a joke about our show, that it was 4 acts of bad decisions wrapped in better lighting. The director called it a love story with casualties. I called it the most expensive excuse I'd ever heard of to practice wanting what I already had. Marco is my partner off stage and on, which is a sentence that sounds like an accomplishment until you notice how many ways it can go wrong. We agreed months ago that the staged kiss didn't count. We agreed months later to stop agreeing. The rules on our fridge, soft commandments written in dry erase and held up by a rubber orange magnet, were starting to look like a critique more than a plan. Eyes, Raphael repeated. I looked at Marco and watched his pupils become the clocks I know too well. He smiled the second kind of smile he owns, the kind that floats near his teeth and then decides to live somewhere else. I let my shoulders fall the way my character's shoulders are supposed to, the way Marco's hand knows to fit under the curve when he's being the right version of himself. We breathed together. We let the silence take the front row. Contact, Raphael said, softer now. We moved through the choreography he'd built with us, fingers grazing lapel, thumb resting against jaw, lips meeting with a certainty we'd been renting by the hour. The kiss was slow and then a little rude about it, the way good ideas always disobey their first draft. Marco's mouth tasted like black coffee and patience. Mine gave him back both and a little more. Raphael stood far enough that his presence felt like permission, and close enough that my nervous system remembered he existed. Better, Raphael said when we parted. You're asking each other, not the air. He crossed the stage, lifted my chin with a single finger and adjusted how my face had decided to hold aftermath. His hand barely touched me. My body remembered it anyway. Mark the beat before the next line, he added, stepping back. That's where the audience will come up for air. We ran the scene twice more, the kiss becoming an argument our mouths were willing to have. Between runs, Raphael's notes slipped off his tongue like staged improvisations. This isn't about hunger, he said. Hunger is cheap. This is about recognition. That's why it's dangerous. He stood with one foot on the apron and one in the house, as if he always liked knowing where the edge was and what it would cost to step too far. After notes, he left us with a nod and a promise to send a video. He smelled like citrus and late trains, and when the door closed, the room became a secret again. Marco and I sat on the lip of the stage with our legs swinging into the orchestra pit like boys. The house lights turned the seats into a rumor of strangers who might forgive us if we made it worth their time. You were good, Marco said, his shoulder finding mine the way it always had. You felt like the line was about to become you. Funny, I said. You felt like you were trying not to let it. He laughed through his nose and tilted his head, so his mouth was closer to my ear than our contract preferred. I was busy trying not to apologize for nothing, he said. What are we doing after this run? Are we going to talk like people with a history or act like two who just met and can't decide if the hotel is worth its rate? We're going home, I said. I wanted that to sound like a decision. It sounded like a hope. At 2:06 a.m., the stage manager flipped the breakers, and the building shrugged itself into sleep. Raphael's email arrived while I was putting my scarf on, a link to the rehearsal footage, a note that said, "Watch the moment before you kiss, there's the scene," and a smiley face that did not belong in this kind of advice. Marco watched over my shoulder and let his chin rest where my shoulder ends. The camera had caught us from the darkness of row G, and in the small screen light I could see our silhouettes become a hypothesis. Marco's hand brushed my jaw as if my face were an instrument he knew how to play. He did not need to rehearse the moment before contact. He's always been good at almost. "Come over," he said when we were in the alley, the cold deciding to be useful. "I'll make the good tea. I'll pretend to know the difference between right now and later." My apartment smelled like the end of a day that had tried to be better than it was. The kettle sang its 7:05 song at the wrong time, because my body keeps business hours even when my brain is freelancing. Marco watched me pour as if he had just remembered he loved me. He set our mugs down, stood in front of me without his coat, and put both palms flat on the table like Raphael had said, like our therapist had said before him, like gods we invented and then denied. "Rules," Marco said. "Not tonight," I said, which is the closest I come to prayer. We kissed again, and this time the room didn't need to pretend to be anything but happy we'd arrived. He pressed me back against the counter, hands under my shirt with that slow, earnest heat that turns a torso into a statement. My mouth learned his name all over again, each syllable an old country we were finally citizens of. He worked my belt loose like he had solved a riddle, but the answer was gratitude instead of relief. I tugged his t-shirt over his head, and the way his stomach tightened under my hand made me forgive 3 years I had been saving for later. We moved to the couch because gravity had opinions, and I had a year of penance that needed fresh air. We didn't rush. We let our bodies finish the sentences our mouths had rewritten all night. There's a way to press a man into the cushion so he becomes the room, and then the better version of a bed. There's a way to pull a man toward you by the small of his back so his breath becomes a promise. There's a way to learn a shoulder with your mouth that makes the rest of the world agree to be background. We found those ways, then found a few more that felt like cheating on our old selves with the ones in the frame. It wasn't exhibitionist, but the world left us enough light to admire. He whispered something rude and perfect into my neck, and the room forgave both of us for being as simple as we are when we stop auditioning for being complicated. After, the apartment performed the quiet that follows an argument that ended well. Marco lay with his head on my chest, which has always been the place where he remembers not to ask for permission to sleep. I combed his hair back with my fingers and memorized the silence so I could pretend later that it had always been this easy. In the dark, he said, "Are we going to talk about Raphael?" "It's only fair," I said. I could feel his smile against my skin. "You first." "His notes are clean," Marco said. "His hands are careful. He's good at showing us the parts of us that the audience paid to see. That's the job, right?" "That's the job," I said, and I said it like a rehearsal I was tired of doing. "Do you want to be with him?" "No," he said, "because he isn't cruel. I want to be someone who can stand in the light with you without thinking someone else deserves the better direction." "Then we go home," I said, even though we were already there. The next night, the audience came for us with their breathing and their need. We gave them a show. We put the kiss where it belonged, and we let the moment before it become the reason. Raphael watched from the back with his arms crossed and his notes glowing on his phone like the quietest brand of power. When the curtain dropped, the sound that rose felt like absolution. Marco took my hand for the bow and squeezed. One of those ancient signals broken men have used for centuries to say, I am choosing you even when it looks like I'm not. After the fourth performance, Raphael suggested drinks to unwind the nerves that insisted on winding at the wrong time. We said yes because practice matters and because blame is boring. At a small table in a warmer corner than we had any right to, he asked what it was like to love someone who shares your job title and your toothbrush. I said, like stealing from yourself with better manners, and Marco snorted into his glass. We could have made it messy, Raphael said, and his mouth shaped the word like it had a backstory. You didn't. You coached us, Marco said. I protected the show, Raphael said. You protected the part of you that wasn't for sale. On the seventh night, the laugh returned. Not the bathroom one. I refused to open hidden, refused to let my thumb do teenage things. No, the laugh that found us happened on stage inside the kiss on purpose. The audience took it and turned it into oxygen. The sound went through my mouth into his, and the kiss grew teeth and consequence and somehow mercy. The applause afterward surprised me. I hate surprise. I loved this. Back home, the kettle did its 7:05 audition at a respectable hour. Marco filmed the coffee rising because he thinks ritual is the only religion left that never excommunicates you. He wrote here in the caption because he knows words like addresses. He handed me the mug and looked at the fridge like it owed him rent. We didn't add a rule. We didn't erase one. We lived underneath them like tenants who intend to pay on time and hope the landlord never asks for proof. If another night offers us an angle that wants to pick a fight, an elevator mirror that multiplies our faces until we forget which ones we believe, a bar light that blesses what it seduces, a stage that begs to be an alibi, I hope I remember the handful of humiliating, useful acts that kept us almost honest. Put water on. Move the chair. Ask why before who. Find the moment before contact and let it become the scene. Then wait for the key in the lock like it's the first note in a song you're finally brave enough to sing. I don't know if we got away with anything. I know that when Marco kisses me now, my mouth stops pretending it needs permission to remember. I know Raphael will stand in the back and watch and write eyes, breath, contact, in a notebook that thinks it invented us. I know the audience will forgive us as long as we keep choosing the truth in a room full of convincing lies. And I know, in a life where frames insist there's a right edge to every picture, that if I press and hold the moment before our mouths find each other, the sound I'll hear is the one that keeps saving me, his breath and mine, agreeing to be the address.